we talked about prayer, and we talked about how many needed clarity on interpreting answers to prayer. For many, they needed to understand what the procedure was, what the protocol was. How does God answer, just generally speaking? And so we addressed, that sometimes an answer to prayer is a maybe, or maybe it's a wait. Today, we're going to specifically deal with the no answers. That answer that we don't like to hear. I don't know too many people who like to hear the word no. In fact, the word no means no in so many languages. It's the same sound, spelled the same, and it invokes the same feelings, same emotions.
Yep.
But today, we're going to talk about the no answer. How do we deal with that? Because we have individuals who, especially in light of what's going on today, there's so much to be depressed about, to be just
Mm.
without hope with what's going on, fear even. So to wait and to be patient with God, according to others, it seems to be asking a lot. But we've got gentlemen on this panel here who I dare say they have the formula, or they at least know how to deal with it. So we just gonna open up the floor. Anybody want to come out first and just talk about this no answer?
Well, I would just jump in and say, I've heard no many times, and I've experienced God making movements that the play. I think it was a play that said, your arms are too short to box with God."
Hmm.
Hmm.
Where I didn't want to hear no, and I was going to make my own yes, and God had to sit me back down on more than one occasion. So I would just start out by saying I'm very familiar with this concept of no as an answer. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep.
Anybody else familiar with no?
I'm definitely familiar with no on many of occasions, but I'd like to piggyback on what Pastor just said in terms of him creating his own yes. And so, in that, I turn to the book of Genesis and I look at Abraham.
Mm.
And so, what one would immediately notice about Abraham is that it wasn't necessarily him, but more so it was his wife Sarah that tried to create her own yes. When God, in fact, had never said no, a total no, he actually did say yes. But it was yes in the way that he saw fit for it to be yes.
Mhm.
Right. And so I was
Mhm.
discussing with Stan off air before we came on earlier that a lot of times what happens is that in the process of salvation, we're still in our Abram stage, right?
Mm.
And so being in that Abram stage and then being in that Sarai stage, you're not yet fit spiritually to walk in your Abrahamic calling.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
with that being said, it feels like a no. You see what I'm saying? And so we have to go through this process, so to speak. And so as you go through this process, you're dying to get out of it. I know for me, when I left the world that I was in, I thought that I was coming into a situation that would just be simply put prosperity and peace, but in a worldly sense, right? And so then I quickly understood that what I'd actually done was allow for the lights to come on because I was living in darkness, right? I
Mm.
come to find out, yeah, I was
Mhm.
on the winning team, although many times because of the process I was going through, it didn't feel like that all the time, right?
Hmm.
But it was a necessary thing for me to be able to embrace, the me that I would become, right? And so, to put a bow on it, many a times what we do is we really want our yes and right now to be yes. And so we want to assume this again, this Abraham and Sarah stage, but you're still in the infancy of that walk. And so you're still in your Abrahamic infancy, so to speak.
So I like that. Let me just jump in real quick, and particularly for our non-believing community who may be tuning in, because I know for many of them, when they hear, when they hear believers, Christians talk about this God relationship that they have, they, I think, more times than not believe that God is, well, some believe that he is like an ATM machine. You can just ask him for money all the time and he
Hmm.
gives it to you. But they do perceive him as somewhat of a Santa Claus, that as long as you're
Hmm.
good, that you're going to get
Mm-hmm.
wished for
Hmm.
on Christmas. I think what they don't hear often enough is that there are times when God just flat out says no, like a parent. And as
Mm-hmm.
children of parents or people who all have had a parent, we understand what it means to just be flat out told no. Now, I like your example because even though some may say that that looks more like a wait, like
Mhm.
a wait, and then you'll get it later, if you understand the story of Abraham, you do understand that he was a different person. And so he went through character development, he went through training and testing, and he eventually came out to be someone different that by the time that he arrived at that point, God said, you know what, you're so different now. Well, I got to give you a new name. Your
Hmm.
name is now this. In fact, your
Mhm.
wife even has a new name because you look so differently. But I believe that that for the non-believer, and I believe that's why this is so critical. I think that we're having this discussion today, is that the non-believing community needs to understand that no, God is not Santa Claus, and
Mm-hmm.
even though we love being on this team, that it's not all hunky dory, and it's not all Christmas morning.
Mm-hmm.
So
And I,
we get told no. Come on, jump in here.
yeah, I'm. First of all, I definitely don't like the word no unless I'm the one saying it to my children.
Speak that. Speak the truth.
But we need to understand also that even some of the greatest men and women of God in the Bible, God said no to.
Mm.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And they had to live with that, and they had to wrestle with that and figure out at the end of the day, are they still going to believe in Him? Is He still
Mm.
going to be their God, or are they going to be a God to themselves and usurp His authority because they're upset? Look at Moses, who wanted to go into the earthly Canaan. God said, "I got something better," but the answer to the
Mm.
earthly Canaan is no. David wanted to build a temple. God said, "Your hands are too bloody." The answer is no. And
Mm.
remember Paul. Paul in the Bible said, "Lord, take this away from me." He prayed 3 times, sincere prayers. I mean, he prayed with all his heart. He not even cried over it. God said, the answer is still, after 3 times, it's still no. You can pray about it 30 times. It's still going to be no. My grace is sufficient for you.
I like that. I like that. Listen, I love the example that you gave. Now, this really is an example. The example of Moses is really an example that I'd love to share for later because it points to the hope that we still have, even when we're told no. But that answer, it sure was flat out no. And see, no, Moses didn't know what was in store for him, did he? Now, did he? He was just told no. God didn't say this, but go and be teased by how wonderful it looks,
Yeah,
but you are not getting it. I mean, think about that. God actually put Moses in a position to be what we would refer to as being teased by it, but you cannot have it.
that's right.
But that's not the end of the story.
Well, I dug up an article actually. I remembered I had an article on saying no because the concept of saying no to each other is difficult as it is. Just you know, before even
That's
getting to
true.
God saying no to us, we grow up hearing no from our parents. No, don't touch that. Don't do that. Um, and the article was saying if no is a fact of life just
Hmm.
as yes is a fact of life. And if you can't say no, how can you say yes either? And a person
Okay.
who has no expectation of no is always going to think that they will get everything they want every single time. That's
Yes.
unrealistic.
Hmm. Mm.
That's
Yes.
unrealistic. So no is a fact of
Yeah.
life. No is necessary. And if we don't like hearing no, I wonder about the people around us. I wonder how the
Hmm.
people around us experience us. if we are unable to hear no from others, much less God. So I just wanted to kind of
Wow.
throw that in there, that on a
Yeah. And
human level.
how much do we not like entitled people?
Great,
You
great
know,
point. Great point.
how much do we not like people who always want their way? We stay away from people like that.
Right.
So why would we want to be that type person to God?
Wow. Come on, Sam. I hear you jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Oh yeah. I'd start out by saying that the Lord comes in His own time, not ours. One of my favorite words in the dictionary is the word intersections or intersection. The way I think about God and His plan for my life is, you know, how you drive up to an intersection and you stop at the light. In my mind, I think of it as, you know, God has been to an intersection in my life before I even arrived there. He already knows what's going to happen at the beginning from the end. And
Okay.
for that reason, we don't know what God's plan is in our life. But you know, when He does say no, we can rest assured though that God does have a plan and a better outcome than we can ever believe. One other point that I'd like to raise is that whenever if we're looking for money as an example, we think that we can do things on our own in order to achieve that. You know, God will humble us and He'll start sending those envelopes to our mailbox with the red windows in them, you know, just to humble us and let us know, hey, we need to call on Him and trust in Him on His plan. And the next thing you know, we could have our next door neighbor bringing us money coming in the mail that we never even expected or know about. And again, it's all in God's time, not ours. Now let's take the example of like a car. If someone wants a shiny new, you know, red car, whatever type of car it is that they want. One time I saw a gentleman, he parked his car in the garage, he got out of the car, and when he got out of the car, he pulled out some sort of handkerchief and started, you know, shining it, wiping the side of it because he saw a little spot nick on it.
Wow.
And then not just that though, but then he started taking pictures, not of his car, but of the cars all around him. Took a picture of the car on the right of him, the picture of the car on the left of him, the picture of the car on the back of him. You know, and I'm saying to myself, boy, if you have to go through all of that in order to, in my mind, you know, the person is at that point idolizing his car versus just asking for the blessing of, hey, give me a vehicle that I can get around in, so to speak. All of that to say, God has a plan and a better outcome for us, even when He says no.
Well, I tell you what, in your example, that just might be the reason why some people are getting a no answer, because anybody who's concerned that much about all the cars around, and immediately I knew what that was, because admittedly, I've had the same thought at some points in my life. I need to record whose license plate is over here, because if I come back and there's a dent on my car, I know who was next to me. But, you know, that's the reason why some people are getting a no answer. So, but what you did share, Sam, was the hope that we have, that often that you just don't understand. God has something better.
You know, I pulled up this article, so I said, let me take some excerpts from it. One part says, when I say no to people, I'm saying no to one aspect of the relationship. I'm not saying no to the whole relationship. But many people don't understand this. They take any no as a complete rejection of them and feel terribly hurt and rejected. They may use this feeling of rejection as a means of bribery or blackmail. I don't know where they're going with that part, but I'll just stick with that first part of it. You know, God saying no is not a rejection of us. You know, delayed, and also delayed doesn't mean denied. Trey knew I was going there with that. And so delayed may mean not yet, not that person, not with that, not that way, not that way. And so no could literally hold protection. It could be protecting us. And I know I've been, you know, some of my personal, so I'll read one other little section. It says, to be able to say no to other people, I need to be able to say no to myself. And so I go back to the first thing of, you know, we have to really look at ourselves. If we can't take someone saying no to us, are we saying no to ourselves? David didn't say no to himself, even though the people in his court were telling him to say no, to stop his foolishness situation with Bathsheba. He didn't say, his whole crew knew what was going on. They're like, you sure you want to do this? We don't think you should be doing this. He ignored it, and it ended up in murder.
Wow.
Can I jump in there? Because
Please.
That's so deep what Dre just said. And see, every time you wake up early in the morning, you're saying no to sleep so that you can spend time with God. God says, look, some things only going to come by fasting and praying. You have to say no to some food. You have to say no to some things you really want to do in order to be in sync with the mind of God. And then you'll be able to understand a little bit better. So being able to accept and to say no to oneself is a major part of the spiritual discipline in order for you to understand how to receive the answers from God.
Trey, you said something earlier. Love it, love it, love it. First of all, Trey, love that what you just said. And something that, Dre, you said earlier, you said if we don't learn to say no, that we are depriving, or something like that. What did you say earlier? The message that I got in that was that we are not doing ourselves any good if we do not learn to deal with no.
I think part of it also has to do with us taking it personal when we hear that no. I heard someone on this panel previously state that oftentimes that no can be an offer of protection, right? And what I love about God is that his no is not as absolute as we allow ourselves to receive it. Oftentimes that no is a hold on, wait a minute, I actually have something greater for you, right? And so within that grand process, we're also learning the virtue of patience, right? So no, you can't right here, or you can't have this right here, right now, because in the background, I was already preparing something far greater for you, but it's going to require that you wait. And that's what I was alluding to earlier in the instance of Abraham being Abram at one point and then growing into his Abrahamic state, right? So once you grow into that Abrahamic state, now you're actually able to receive what it is that God was already, putting into place for you in the first place.
But Terry, let me say this real quick. Sometimes it's not a no meaning to wait. It's not a no meaning you'll get it in heaven. Sometimes it's just a no, and you ain't never going to get it ever. But we have to be all right with that, because all that means is that we never needed it really in the first place.
I like that because, and piggybacking off of that, sometimes people, as Stan was talking about, we look at God as like an ATM, and so we come to God asking God for some money or for wealth. That might not be what God has called you to be in terms of being wealthy in a financial sense that way, but you'll be wealthy in other areas. You'll have a large family that's healthy, that literally wants for nothing, right? Got a roof over your head and clothes on your back and food to eat, but you don't necessarily have that affluent neighborhood that you live in, whatnot, what have you, but you have this wonderful relationship with God. That's, to me, that's a simple way of living, a wealth that I would desire, versus being wealthy but having all these headaches and being estranged from my family. So yes, I would agree with that.
I wanted to say that sometimes I believe that God says no because the gift that he is going to give to us is too good for us, that we don't even know how to handle it. So I think sometimes God likes for us to just be able to hang around in his presence so that he can talk to us and lead us and guide us and prepare us for that great gift that he has in store for us. My analogy would be like in basketball, the coach is not going to send you into the game until he knows that you're ready. Same thing with God. He's not going to give us something when he knows that we're really not ready for it. So he wants us to be able to dialogue with him, humble ourselves, prepare ourselves mentally, spiritually, physically, everything, emotionally, so to speak. So I say, hey, we still need to come to God in thanksgiving. We still need to come to God in thanksgiving, even when we haven't received that promise yet, or that gift of what we ask that we're looking for.
Man.
I believe it was Jesus. I believe it was Jesus that said, "Not my will, but Thy will be done." And many times you can't do both. So if you're doing God's will, then that means if your will is not in perfect alignment, you can't do both. It's got to be one or the other. By the way, that brings me to the point that even the Son of God said, "If there be any way, to let this cup pass." You know what I mean? So even God had to say no to His own Son.
Sam set it up perfectly because the word that I wrote down here is maturity.
Okay.
That no can bring about, if we allow it, it can bring about a sense of maturity. And the question we often need to ask ourselves is, when we get that no, what should we do during that time frame, during that delay?
Yes.
Look around and see how we can be mature. Now, I mean, Sam doesn't even know, but that's very personal for me, because I've gone through so many cycles. I've started over so many times. I've been told no when I was pushing for my own yes. And in those in between times, in that delay, there were times that I had to look at refining my character, so that when an abundance of whatever showed up, I didn't lose my mind with that, And so what we do during that downtime between that no and what God has for us, or that no, or that not yet, and what he will eventually allow to come to us, I believe is extremely important.
Man.
Yeah.
I also believe that oftentimes we struggle with the no because for some reason or another, we actually would like to allow ourselves to believe that God owes us an explanation as to why His no is a no, when He does not owe us, right? And then you said something earlier in terms of, what are we doing during that delay? That's assuming that there is. Because oftentimes God will just give you your marching orders and He expects you, us, to walk in obedience to those marching orders, right? So we should be at work. That's what we should be doing during this perceived delay. We should actually be at work and, operating within the context of the no that He gave us, as well as the yes that He's given us.
Man. So, Sam set the stage, and then Dre, you and Terrence added to it. Man, let me take it personal. Man, I know you guys remember I shared touched a little bit on it in our group text leading up to this week. But there was a time in my life where I wanted something, and I wanted it badly, and I was told no. Now, before I get to the part where I say that in hindsight or looking backwards, I see that I'm glad that I was told no. Let me talk about what would have happened had I gotten my wish, because I had wonderful and awesome, I had wonderful plans for what I could do if God gave me the yes. That yes was I wanted to be signed to Motown in the early 90s. And my group poised to do just that. They were
Come on,
courting.
Stan.
They were
Stan, you
courting.
had one of them hairstyles, man?
They had come on, man, listen. They had assigned us a production team, and we had recorded our first song. But long
Nice.
story short, we ended up backing out of it. But now let me go back though to the part about what I wanted. I wanted that contract, and I knew what was coming. I knew because Boys the Men was on the label at the moment, and we had been told what they had gotten when they signed. They got a house and they got a car. They all got a house. They all got a car, and we were gonna get the same thing. We was expecting to get the same thing, and I could just see dollar signs, and I could see fame, and I could see being on stage. I wanted all that. Now, what I sent the text out this week, and this is what I want my non-believers to understand, is that I'm glad that I got a no answer from God, the one that many believe to be a Santa Claus and an ATM machine. I'm glad he said no and not yes, because
Mm-hmm.
in the mind that I had then, the maturity level that I had then, that would have been a bad combination. Money and fame and my level of maturity, toxic mix. If you guys think Bobby Brown was wild, Stan would have been off the chart. Now, fast forward, I don't get that. I don't get that. I get a no. Fast forward, as I grow and I mature, I'm able to look backwards over the old me, knowing full well what the old me would have done. I am praising God because I'm glad that he said no. The answer
There
was
you go.
no.
There you go.
Glad it was
Yep.
no. And
Praise God for the no.
so yeah, praise God for the no. So embrace the no. That's Dan's message for the day. I'm gonna pass it
Yeah.
beside.
You know what? You know, how many of us went through a time where, Lord, I want to be a little taller, you know, or you know, so I can play in the NBA,
Come on,
or
come
I want
on.
to
You're
do
baller.
this, or I want to do that. But you know, the bottom line is that within your call and your purpose that God has for you? And obviously, there's just some things that are not. But what God has for you, not only is it for you, but it's so amazing that it's better than anything else you could strive for, to walk in your purpose and to receive all the blessings that come in that train is so much better than being anywhere else where you're really out of place.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Hmm.
You know, I saw Sam setting up, so I'm always watching to make sure I don't jump in too quick. But you know, two things I'd like to touch on. It says, you know, God always says yes to wisdom. Like Solomon asked for wisdom. Like he could have asked for anything. He could have, and God might have been like, nah, you don't need that. You know, you already got like 700 wives, 300 concubines. I might have the numbers mixed up. I don't know how any one man can deal with all of that.
Okay,
Whatever.
You know,
God
but
did not say
hey,
yes to all
he,
that.
he didn't say yes to all that. Exactly. I'm with that. Thank you for clarifying. So let me stick with my point, and that is when God offered him, you know, like to ask for what it is that he wanted, he thought about it and he thought about what mattered and what made the most sense, and to ask for wisdom in all things. So no matter what situation he was in, no matter what it is that he wanted, he said, give me wisdom. And that's what I've been asking God personally for. Give me wisdom. The other thing is,
Yes.
I think about Moses at the tree, the burning bush, and God is trying to tell him, you know, go on back and get my people. And Moses is giving all these excuses. I can't speak Egyptian fluently anymore. God is like, Aaron, your brother is there. He still speaks it fluently. So stop complaining. Then he's like, well, when I go there and I tell Pharaoh, that God says, let his people go, you know, and the people ask me, who are you and whatever, what am I going to say? And God said, I am that I am. And I've always stopped and broken that down to be, I am that I am. So I am whatever you're missing. I'm whatever that. So
Hmm.
God is like, here's a blank check. Take a blank check to them and say, I am Jehovah Raha. Raha, did I say it right? Jehovah Nisei, Jehovah
Yeah.
Shammah, Jehovah, and I don't even remember what each of those mean, but I know it means like I'm a provider, I'm a healer,
Yes.
God is saying I'm all of these things, I'm whatever you need. So there are things that you're going to ask me for. I'm always going to be willing to provide those things, but there's going to be times where I say no. And if you have wisdom, if you say, God, give me wisdom, that wisdom will carry you through that no as well.
Come on. Come on.
I'm
That's true.
gonna rest my case right there.
Yeah.
Hey, can I
Give me
ask y'all?
wisdom, man.
Can I ask y'all a question?
Come on.
Since you went there, let me ask you this question: isn't it true that when we get to heaven, aren't we gonna get everything? Like, you know, in the book of Revelation, God's gonna turn to all the redeemed and say, "Behold, you know, I give you all things." Not only is he going to make all things new, but he gives it to
Right.
all the saved. So there's nothing that
Right.
we could ever ask for, hope for, or dream or imagine that we won't have when we get to heaven. So
Yeah.
all I'm saying is that we're focused on what we can get right now, but our focus really should be, Lord, just help us to make it in to that
Yeah.
kingdom where we're going to get everything. But if we're trying to get it
Yeah.
right now, that's where we messed up.
We wouldn't even know how to handle all things here on earth. Here on
Yeah.
earth, we wouldn't even know how to handle that.
What mess it up? No, I like that. And you know what comes to mind is those stories, those movies that we've seen. You know, a father's the owner, the CEO of a large corporation, and he's been training and priming his son to take over. If he would allow the son to take over at any point before he was ready, it would be catastrophic. The company would go down. It would
No.
lose everything. But once he knows that the son has reached that point where he's ready, I can now turn it over. And my son
Yeah.
has got a level of maturity and a level of wisdom and understanding that they'll make all the right decisions moving forward, and I won't have to worry. That's when they get the
Yeah.
reins. So as you pointed out, Trey,
Mm.
get to heaven and we get offered, we get told that now, what do you want? What do you want? Well, God,
Yeah.
He knows that we're able to handle. Sam, as you put it, we're able to handle it. Oh man, love it,
Yeah.
love it, love it. So we're
And,
talking about no, you guys.
mm,
The answer is no for many of us today. If you want to know why, it's because we're just not ready. But learn to live with the no. I had to learn to live with the no too, and I got past it.
you know, and I was in Genesis this morning, Genesis 3, and two parts in Genesis 3. Matter of fact, let me pull it up. We see where Genesis 3, where Eve is talking to the serpent, and the serpent tells her, let me see. For God doth know that in the day thou eat thereof, verse 5, chapter 3, verse 5. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be open, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. And I remember when over in verse 22, it continues where God's now, after all of that goes down, God says, and the Lord God, he's talking to the Trinity, he's talking to the Godhead, and he says, behold, the man is become as one of us to know good and evil, and now lest he put forth his hand and take also the tree of life, eat and live forever. And so I was pondering that, and I was like, wait a minute. So I looked up the word knowing, and that word knowing is translated to become acquainted by seeing. I wrote it here, to become acquainted by seeing it, not necessarily being learned, but becoming acquainted with it. And so
Okay.
the devil, it was a half truth, so it was a whole lie, of course, but he was so subtle and smooth with it, because he was like, you will become as God, knowing good and evil, but you don't know how to handle the two. You don't know how to balance the two. You're going to use, so evil in the hands of man always gets translated as moral perverseness, wickedness,
Ooh.
etc. Evil in the hands of God,
Ooh.
and there's many stories. God sent David an evil spirit. God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. That was, and God says, did a good thing happen in a city and I didn't do it? Did an evil thing happen and I didn't do it? Because evil in the hand of God is justified calamity, justified destruction. And so when we see this, it's like we wouldn't know how to handle these things. Those things should be left to God. So when he says no, there ought to be this thing called trust as well. My kids have learned to trust me. My wife has learned to trust when I say, babe, not yet, or no, I don't think we need to do that. She will stop.
Yeah.
And she will consider.
Come on.
Ooh, I gotta say
Go ahead.
this.
I felt you, man. Go ahead. Bring it
Oh
on
my goodness. Dre just opened up something huge, man. Because look, anytime we want something and we're going after something that's not in God's will for us, somebody lied to somebody. Either we lying to ourselves or somebody lied to us. It's a lie somewhere, somehow, some way that got us hooked on something other than what I said is for us, and that's why we want it.
Man.
Let me piggyback on that, because, in saying that, I'm sitting here looking at the Ten Commandments, and the same holds true when you look at those. There are a whole lot of no's in there that are yeses simultaneously. Can I have another
Mm.
God? No, I cannot have another God.
Hmm.
Right? Can I make idols? No, I cannot make idols. Right? And so on. Like out of 8 out of the 10 commandments, say the same thing. No, you cannot do. You cannot murder. You cannot steal. So on and so forth. And man, in and of ourselves, we'll justify these things, right? And it's what made this necessary for God to
Hmm.
even come out from the outset and say, "Look, these right here,
Hmm.
there's no arbitration for them. You can. It's
Mhm.
no."
No.
Mm. As you say that, Terrence, I'm like, you know what? We need to get our nose up. You know what I'm saying? We need to get our nose up. You know what I'm saying? It's like we probably need to say no to some things as
Tyler.
well.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah. We need to say no to some things ourselves.
yeah. Sometimes we need to get up
Mm.
from the table and just say no.
Learn from God. That's right. Hello.
Right, right. But you know what? Maybe we will after
Hmm.
this broadcast. Maybe
One thing,
that'd be a takeaway. I'm gonna let you come in, Sam. Maybe that'd be a takeaway for all of us. That not only will we learn to better accept no when it's told to us, but we'll learn to also say no because sometimes that's what we. Sometimes our problem is that we can't say no. And,
Yes.
I'll make sure to send the article so that you guys can have that article on
right,
saying no.
yes, yes, please do. Come on, Sam.
yeah, I just wanted to say that God knows what we need even before we ask
Mhm.
it. And unequivocally, God cares for us. So all we really need to do is just commune with him, talk to him, come to him, and let him, because he will hear our prayers and answer our prayers. We don't know how he's going to
Yeah.
do it, but he will.
Come on, come on. And you know what? As a final thought, I want you to continue on with this as we begin to bring this to a close. Oh my goodness, it just seems like as it gets good,
Mm,
we need to bring it to a
Oh
the final
man.
thought I want
mm,
you guys to have. So we've helped the listener, whether you're a believer or not. And particularly, let me just speak to my non-believing audience once again. I need you guys to know that we don't always get told yes. In fact, we
right.
often, I dare
Right.
say more oftentimes than yes, we
Yep.
get told no.
Mhm.
And as a believer, we have to deal with it. That's just the end of it. Deal with no. The answer
That's
is
right.
no. God is not Santa Claus and he's not an ATM machine and we don't just get whatever we want. And
Or
so
genie.
we started
Mm,
right. So we have, I believe, sufficiently conveyed the message that as believers that we need to just learn to deal with it. Stop having a temper tantrum because you didn't get what you want. It's obviously that your character needs no because you're having a tantrum. But before we go, let's leave them with hope though, because as Pastor Trey alluded to earlier, Moses was told, no, you will not make it into the promised land. Here, take a look at it. In fact, I want you to look at how nice it is. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that paradise? Look at how big those grapes are. Wouldn't you like to take a bite of Moses? No, you cannot have it. But what he didn't know was that he got something better. He
Mhm.
got
Yes.
an early pass into heaven. That's the exception, not the rule. But Moses died and went to heaven afterwards. And so I believe that that's the final message that I'd like for us to share is that, we get told no, we got to deal with it, but does God have something better?
Mhm.
What are your final
mm,
thoughts?
My final thought is this. Whenever God says no to us, we should not we should not think that God does not love us.
Yes.
We should not think that just because this prayer of ours has not been answered, we shouldn't believe that God is not going to answer any more prayers of ours. We
Hmm.
should not believe that, because the fact is that the Lord knows what is good for us, and he also knows when it is best for us to have it.
Come on, say that.
I would say
I
that
would-
when
mhm.
God says no, what we need to realize is that we should not allow that in our relationship with Him to become an indictment against the character of God, right? We should understand that His no comes from a position of infinite wisdom, right? And so, in embracing the fact that God knows the beginning from the end,
Hmm.
all we need to do is observe and practice patience and see what it is that, he does have for us in light of him saying no.
I'll piggyback off of that and say, you're not the only one God says no to.
Mm.
And if we recognize, if we could see, one inspired writer said, if we could, no matter what you're going through, if you could see things from God's vantage point, you would have a whole different mindset as to what's going on. And I'll close with this. I want you to be certain that God is saying no to the enemy on our behalf constantly.
Man, wow. That's
Yes.
right there.
That's it.
Praise his holy name.
You know what? That's a great endpoint right there. We're not the only ones being told no, so no, you're not alone. And the one who gets told the most is your enemy.
Is the enemy.
Amen.